Good morning, everyone, and thank you for your interest in today's Responsible Business event, delivered in partnership with Community Planning Aberdeen and Business in the Community. The event will be recorded in its entirety and will consist of three main sections. Firstly, we'll hear from our keynote speakers, followed by an opportunity to ask some question and answers. So please do send us your questions by using the chat function on Microsoft Teams. This is usually represented by a speech bubble icon, and we will try to respond to as many as your questions as we have in the time available. For part 2, we will move into our breakout workshops and finally come together again for reflection and closing remarks. The event will close at 11:40. I'm now delighted to pass over to Community Planning Aberdeen Chair, Councillor Jenny Lang.
Thank you, Laurie, for the introduction. As Laurie says, I am Jenny Lang, co-leader of Aberdeen City Council and chair of Aberdeen's Community Planning Partnership. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to open today's proceedings, and I'd like to start by thanking each and every one of you for making time to attend Community Planning Aberdeen's first Responsible Business event. It's great that so many of you have managed to join us this morning, and I'm particularly pleased that a large number of responsible business partners from across the city have been able to sign up to today's event. Before I go on to cover what we hope to achieve today, I think it would be useful to spend a few moments reflecting on what motivated us to bring you all together. In my role as Community Planning Chair, I took part in a panel session at a business breakfast event organised by CNIC. The theme of the business breakfast was corporate social responsibility, and our discussion focused on how businesses could use their CSR activities to best effect both for the city and their respective organisations. During this discussion, I was really impressed by the commitment and the enthusiasm of the business representatives present, and their clear desire to make a positive difference to the city through their CSR activities came shining through. However, the discussion that day also highlighted that the vast majority of the people in the room had no real knowledge or understanding of Aberdeen's local outcome improvement plan. And many also made it clear they found it challenging to get any clear information or guidance about where their CSR resources could be channeled to ensure greatest impact. Now, this lack of direction meant businesses were not always maximising the effectiveness of their endeavours, and in turn, some crucial organisations, groups and communities were missing out on the valuable help and support businesses had to offer. Given this feedback, we felt it was important to use all channels at our disposal to promote the community planning work taking place in the city and to provide businesses with greater opportunities to get actively involved. In order to achieve this, we have worked closely with public and private sector partners over recent months to raise the profile of community planning within the city, and we've developed a digital platform which should provide businesses with the information and links they want and need. We are particularly grateful to both Business in the Community and CNIC, who have been very helpful in facilitating this work and have worked in partnership with us to deliver this and other similar events. Now, ideally, we would have been meeting face to face today, which would have afforded us the opportunity to chat over coffee and build personal connections, which are often so important when it comes to partnership working. However, being unable to physically meet up today is really a minor inconvenience when you consider the true impact COVID-19 has had and continues to have on all our lives. The degree to which we have been directly affected will vary, but I think it's safe to say that the last 6 months has been extremely challenging for families, communities and businesses across the city. During this time, Community Planning Aberdeen has played a critical role in supporting a rapid and coordinated response from public sector organisations particularly for our most vulnerable people and communities. Our third sector partners have provided essential support in recruiting, coordinating and supporting volunteers and community groups. And the response from business across the city has been quite remarkable, with many organisations coming forward to help. I think our crisis response clearly demonstrates just what can be achieved when public, private and third sector organisations pool together and work in partnership with communities. Whilst it is obviously heartening to see what we can achieve by working in partnership during a time of crisis, I truly believe that continuation of this collaborative working will be a key component of Aberdeen's long-term recovery. It's clear that Aberdeen's facing a significant economic shock as a direct result of COVID-19, and it is anticipated that the ongoing consequences for business, young people and the most vulnerable groups in the city will be considerable. Therefore, I would argue that it's more important than ever that we do all we can to align our joint resources to community planning Aberdeen's ambition for the city. But this will only be achieved if everyone has a clear understanding of what those ambitions are and a knowledge of the community planning work that is currently ongoing in the city and what's planned for the future. Now, we certainly hope that following today's event, you'll have a better understanding about the partnership's work, but let me begin by explaining what's driving that work. The Aberdeen City Local Outcome Improvement Plan is the partnership's driving strategy, which sets out a vision for Aberdeen as a place where all people can prosper, regardless of their background or circumstances. We know that despite the relative prosperity Aberdeen has compared to other areas of Scotland, there are still vast inequalities which exist between our people and communities. Our aspirations for prosperity go far beyond financial success and extend to our ambition to see all people, families, communities and businesses do well, flourish and succeed. And I believe we have a part to play in providing these opportunities, each and every one of us. I'm more conscious than ever that we can't achieve these aspirations alone, as no single organisation has the solution to the challenges that many people and communities in our society face. It's only by working jointly, public, private and third sector together, that we can ensure we utilise the power of the collective to best effect and deliver something truly remarkable. We see this morning's event as a springboard for greater collaboration between Community Planning Aberdeen and the Aberdeen Responsible Business community. Today you'll find out more about Community Planning Aberdeen and how you can get involved in our work to improve outcomes for the economy, people and place of Aberdeen. You'll also hear from business in the community and business leaders across the city about how, by working in partnership, we will achieve lasting transformational change. So in conclusion, we have some great speakers on the programme today and a couple of really interesting workshops which I hope you'll find both informative and productive. I'll look forward to speaking with you more during the breakout sessions and hopefully working with you in the future to ensure we can deliver on our community planning aim of making Aberdeen a place where all people can prosper. I now have the pleasure of handing over to Alan Thornburgh, Director for Business in the Community in Scotland, who's going to provide an insight from a business perspective. Alan, over to you.
I just want to first of all echo Councillor Lane's words of welcome at the beginning there. The crisis we have seen unfold with COVID-19 has been really quite insightful in regards to how responsible businesses are operating. I think from my perspective, I probably wind my mind back to that same conference with CNOC, which was entitled Power of the Collective, incidentally. And there was a real sense that we could be pulling together a little more effectively than we already are, but recognising there is such great strength in Aberdeen within the business community and within other parts of the economy as well to really support the community overall, and especially those experiencing need at any given time. So coupled with some of these early conversations over the course of the last few months with COVID, we undertook some research with a number of different organisations right up and down the country, and the theme of that was called Building Back Responsibly. And really what we've been trying to do within that is just understand what has surfaced from businesses in terms of how they integrate with their communities. Indeed, what is their purpose? How has it impacted travel to work or the lack thereof, probably more so? And what does the future relationship look like between businesses and its local economies? And so what's come up out of that is really quite interesting. And it underlines, I think, a need more than ever for us to be completely interconnected and joined up. And I'm not suggesting that hasn't been the case, but we can always improve. So there's been a real rethink, I think, in how we do things. And what has come to the fore, I think, in the early days of the crisis is a real focus on employee well-being, and rightly so. And that has continued throughout. And we're seeing all sorts of positive moves around, working practices and job design. But we also need to think quite carefully about the buildings that, in many cases are sitting empty. And that's a conversation we've begun to have with lots of our members up and down the country. And so on to the next slide. I think what comes through loud and clear is public trust in businesses has started to improve, actually. An Edelman Trust Barometer measure this annually. And one of the things that they are very clear about is when they go out and survey individuals across the world, what they're looking for businesses is real leadership from chief executives in terms of how we build back as an economy. And so this report here that we will share following the event today, Time to Fix Up, is very much about that. And so maybe if we can go into the next slide, please, we can just bring some of the highlights of that forward. It won't surprise you to see that the opportunities are actually about a new definition of what success is. And there's been some really interesting things going on, discussions in places like North Ayrshire around well-being economies and measuring more than just economic output, which is important and it powers our economies, but it can't be the only measure of success. So that's something that's coming to the fore. Businesses, I think, increasingly are being challenged on social and economic and environmental value, the opportunity that exists around us getting to net zero and doing so in a way that is inclusive and allows people to retrain and find new opportunity in a new world is absolutely critical. I've mentioned briefly health and well-being, so that's something we're acutely aware of, both within the employee community and employer community, but much more broadly. And thinking about some great examples that have come to the fore around isolated individuals and organisations, really proactively trying to prioritise support and service of them in lots of ways. Rethinking offices and jobs I've touched on here. We are invariably, lots of us still working from home, myself included. That does mean we've got lots of opportunities to think about how do we use offices and spaces differently. And again, there's been some really interesting examples coming to the fore there around co-working, when we're allowed to do that again. But equally thinking about, could be a place for education to begin to integrate into workplaces as well. Equality and inclusion, not surprisingly, has come through very strongly, and in many cases we're seeing steps backwards on gender equality. Heading into this crisis, it's largely been women that have been doing the bulk of caring. I know that's a vastly general statement, but we've seen quite a lot of, I suppose, inequality coming to the fore in regards to homeschooling and all these sorts of things. So we can't turn the clock back on the progress that's been made over, 40, 50, possibly even 100 years. But what we are heartened by, I think, is the real refreshed connection with communities. You may know that Business in the Community was founded 40 years ago in the teeth of the race riots in, I suppose, notably Toxteth and Liverpool and Brixton and London. And that was very much around a real burning sense of injustice. And, businesses were a part of trying to heal those divides and coming together. And, what we now know of is diversity, inclusion, corporate social responsibility was really given birth to then. And we think we've come an awful lot further. Just over the course of these last months, we set up a national business response network, which has remarkably connected some 2,000 asks from communities and offers from business together. And so I think that leads me to the kind of concluding point is the opportunity to work in partnership with Community Planning Aberdeen is a great one. I've been very impressed with the work that you have done, colleagues at the City Council and far beyond in the partnerships that you've got to really understand what communities are seeking in terms of opportunities and needs at this point. And I think it's incumbent on us as a community of businesses to say, how can we best support you? There is an overwhelming demand for businesses to be of value, I think, and that's been really refreshing to see. And it's been well established in Aberdeen for such a long time that I think the opportunity is to really now pull together under those key priorities and the localities that are perhaps more disproportionately affected or that are coming to the fore. So I've probably said more than enough from my perspective. I want to thank, Councillor Lang, Laurie and Michelle and colleagues at Aberdeen City Council, and indeed everybody else that's on the call today. And I very much hope we can work in partnership together to support all of the priorities that exist in Aberdeen and really make it a place where responsible business can thrive. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you, Alan. We'll now move on to hear from our next speaker, Andreas Guevara, VP of City Integrated Solutions at BP.
My name is Andres Guevara, and in BP, I am responsible for developing partnerships with cities to help them to get to net zero. And that's exactly what I want to talk about today, which is the importance of working in partnership to reach big ambitions such as net zero. So if you can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So in BP, we're going through a quite massive transformation at the moment. Earlier this year, we launched our new strategy that will reshape our business within the next decade as we pivot from an international oil company focused on producing resources to an integrated energy company that is focused on delivering solutions for its customers. We've also laid out our new sustainability frame, which links our strategy to our purpose, that being to reimagine energy for people and our planet. The three focus areas of our sustainability frame are, first of all, to become a net zero company by 2050 or sooner and help the world get to net zero. The second element of our sustainability framework is to improve people's lives. by supporting a just energy transition, promoting well-being for our workforce and the communities where we work. And thirdly, to care for our planet, and that is to make a positive difference to the environment where we operate. We have chosen these three areas because together they put our purpose into practice. They reinforce our strategy and concentrate our efforts and resources where we believe we can make the most difference. BP, as part of the oil and gas industry, has contributed to a strong economy and vibrant business community in Aberdeen for decades. And both local and global companies have made tremendous contribution to the sector and communities they work in. However, we also acknowledge that sometimes the gains of the oil and gas industry have not been enjoyed equally by all. That is one of the things we, like other companies, have sought to address through our CSR activities, but also through our people who care about giving back to their communities. So BP has been in Aberdeen for over 50 years, and we're very proud of our heritage in the northeast of Scotland. I mean, literally most employees, if not all, have passed through Aberdeen and learned about the oil industry by working in Aberdeen, including myself. We've been a very active corporate citizen for as long as we've been in the region. Let me just quote some examples that I thought were relevant. In 2019, we invested £1 million to support the transformational Aberdeen Art Gallery redevelopment project, and a pledge to raise £100,000 to support the social care charity VSA. We also have long-standing relationship with several other local charities, in addition to VSA, such as Cornerstone, which is a social care charity, and CLAN, a cancer charity. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we have donated PPE to the NHS and to VSA, as well as essential food and housekeeping items to support their crucial activities in the region. Through our Schools Link program, we have been supporting STEM education in schools across the northeast of Scotland for over 50 years. And we have invested more recently £10 million with Scottish Forestry Alliance to plant 3.8 million new trees in 2020, that was. When we think about at a national level, in 2019, BP supported an estimated £10 billion of gross value added contribution to the GDP of the nation, of which 7 billion were spent with UK suppliers and resulted in more than 90,000 jobs. That means that in 2019, half a percentage point of the UK's GDP was supported by BP's activity. If we go to the next slide, please, that gives an overview of our CSR framework. But now let's deep dive into net zero. We want to become a net zero company by 2050 or sooner and help the world to get there. But how do we actually get there? How do we actually help the world get there? So I think in that regard, I wanted to focus on cities today. So if you can please go to the next slide. Cities are home to about half of the world's population today. However, they generate a disproportionate amount of emissions. Around 70% of CO2 emissions come from cities. And we expect both of those figures to grow as urbanization increases and over time. Let's see what COVID does. But I think long-term, cities will continue to concentrate population in an increasing fashion. I think that tells you that cities are absolutely critical to the progress of the energy transition. For example, Indonesia, another country where we operate, is planning to move their capital from Jakarta, which is sinking, to East Kalimantan at a cost of over $30 billion. China, on the other hand, is investing in the creation of clean energy industrial parks. New cities in Saudi Arabia, such as NEOM, will only be using renewable energy. And established cities like Aberdeen, who have set a net zero vision to reduce carbon emissions and become a climate positive city, are investing heavily in energy efficiency and clean mobility. Aberdeen is an absolute pioneer. We'll talk a little bit more about that. The research that we've been reading suggests that cities have the potential to achieve around 40% of the carbon mitigation goals outlined in the Paris Agreement. However, we're seeing that many cities need support to implement change, and they cannot do it by themselves because they can only do by themselves 40%, according to this the research. The challenges that cities are facing, in our view, range from having ambitions but needing help with plans, or actually having plans but then needing the capabilities to execute those plans. And when we look at the corporate sector, it's actually, the story is very similar. While nearly 80% of major corporates have ambitions for carbon reduction of some sort, only about a quarter are on track to meet those targets. This tells you that many things, but a couple of insights. One is that the transition to a lower carbon future is incredibly complex, and it cannot be done by entities alone. You need to work with others. It also requires long-term financial commitments in an environment where there is tremendous regulatory and technical uncertainty. And we're going to face the challenge of integrating existing and emerging technologies. I think this is where a company like BP can come in. And we believe we can have a very distinctive role to play in the energy and mobility decarbonization. We intend to work in partnership with cities to help them develop their plans and provide capabilities to execute those plans at scale, to the benefit of the city and the planet, of course. We will identify and deliver integrated energy and mobility solutions, because there's not one solution to the problem of decarbonization. They need to be integrated by definition to help cities decarbonize by bringing together all the different capabilities that exist in BP, products and services, with our partners, so we can create value that is greater than the sum of its parts. That takes me to the next slide, where I want to focus a bit more on, specifically on Aberdeen and our relationship with Aberdeen. Earlier this year, and I'm going to mention two cities here, but earlier this year, both Aberdeen and Houston made a pledge to become net zero, just like us. And obviously BP has a long and great relationship with both cities after decades of oil and gas operations. You could actually say that both of these cities and BP are pretty much on the same journey of reinventing ourselves, given the energy transition that we're going through. So we started a dialogue, very open, constructive dialogue, to explore areas for cooperation as we both navigate the energy transition. And I'm thrilled to say that we have signed in the case of Houston, a climate action plan agreement and an MOU with the city of Aberdeen that outlines the energy transition partnership we're creating to achieve net zero. In the case of Aberdeen, even though it has a relatively small population, when you compare it to, for example, Houston, it is absolutely a pioneer city that has focused on positioning as a world-leading hydrogen hub in the broader region. In addition to implementing energy efficiency for buildings and optimizing district heating, accelerating adoption of low-carbon mobility, and moving towards a circular economy. So through our partnership, we are going to be providing planning advice on these areas to a very competent team that already exists inside the Aberdeen City Council, and hope to participate in their future implementation. In turn, obviously, the city can help tremendously by enabling decarbonization through effective policy. So it's a very, very exciting opportunity that we're actively progressing. And just to finish, I just want to say that this is just a start, as we see it, of what we expect to be a journey towards net zero. Houston and Aberdeen are not the only ones. There are many other cities who have embarked on this journey and that we want to work with in partnership with. Because I think the key point to take away from my perspective is that by ourselves, we will not get there. We will need to collaborate and work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andreas. We now have Michelle Coughlin, Corporate Strategy and Community Planning Manager at Aberdeen City Council.
Thank you, Andreas, for taking us through the fantastic work BP is doing in partnership with Aberdeen City Council to reduce carbon emissions. It really is a perfect example of how business and public service organisations working together to achieve great transformational change, and work which is so vital to the achievement of our vision and ambitions within the city's local outcome improvement plan, not least around climate change, but also the many interrelated outcomes Community Planning Aberdeen is committed to working together to improve. So what is Community Planning Aberdeen? Well, it's the name of the city's strategic partnership of public and third sector organisations working together and with communities across Aberdeen. It is one of 32 community planning partnerships which exist across Scotland, and we have a core membership of community planning partners who have a statutory duty to work together to reduce inequality and improve outcomes for Aberdeen. Now, those are our big service organisations working in the city, so Aberdeen City Council, Police Scotland, NHS Grampian, Scottish Fire and Rescue Services. And if we can just show the slide that shows all of the other organisations that are part of that partnership. Now, our members also include ACFO, who provide an essential third sector interface, and the Civic Forum, which provides representation from Aberdeen's community groups. These are just our core members, those that sit on the community planning board chaired by Councillor Lane. But we have many other charities, voluntary groups and community organisations which work with us in our improvement work. And it's this collaboration that enables the Community Planning Partnership to bring added value to the great work already taking place across the city by individual organisations, but it ensures that we're not trapped in a cycle of reacting and responding to society's challenges in isolation, but that we're working proactively together to take early intervention to prevent these problems happening in the future. Now, community planning has been around for a long time. It was first legislated for in Scotland in 2003, but it's typically involved public services, working with the third sector and communities to improve outcomes for society. However, businesses have a very important role to play in that too. And what has become really clear over the last 18 months is that we have a really engaged, responsible business community in Aberdeen that shares this belief, and that through your corporate social responsibility practice, you're already proactively working with charities and community groups and schools. So the advantage to working with Community Planning Aberdeen is that you're connecting with a wide network of public and third sector organisations that have a strategic overview of the needs of the city and a good handle on where our gaps and opportunities for improvement exist. Continuous analysis of data across a wide range of indicators gives us a clear view of our priorities, and our local outcome improvement plan is our articulation of how we are tackling these issues head on and as part of a collective and coordinated partnership response. Now, hopefully you've all had the chance to explore our corporate social responsibility platform, which we've been promoting along with this event, and we're formally launching with you today. It's designed to make it easy for businesses to connect into the partnership and to navigate the different opportunities that we've identified for the private sector to get involved. We've also connected our priority areas for partnership work into the UN Sustainable Development Goals, so we have a shared language across our respective organisations. Now, the opportunities we have listed on the platform are limited only by our imagination, and we're keen to explore with our responsible business partners what further ideas you have that you would believe could help us achieve our shared ambitions. And that's what we want to kick off with you today in our workshops. You've all signed up to participate in one of 2 breakout sessions today, and you should have received a link into those breakout sessions by email that will take you straight into those. These breakout sessions are being led jointly by leaders across the Community Planning Partnership and in the business community. So Breakout Session 1 will focus on what we can do together to secure the future for children and young people, and Breakout Session 2 is about how we can nurture our local communities.
Thanks, Michelle. We're now going to move on to our question and answer session. We have our panel. So we've got the panel that you've heard from already today, but we've also got some of our facilitators who you'll be meeting in the workshop element of the event. So I'm just going to review here. Actually, I think we've got a question, if you're still there, Alan, that you might want to take in the first instance. And it is a question around how COVID-19 has impacted the progress to meet the global development goals.
Yeah, a great point. As a global society, we've got now, I think just at the UN General Assembly last month, there is a real press for a decade of action. So we know that the Sustainable Development Goals are better understood, they're more visible, but actually our progress against them has not been shining. I think COVID has shown us, and I know it is dreadful, but it has shown us that actually change is possible quite rapidly with the right, I suppose, with the right factors. So we've rallied together, we've come together in terms of supporting each other through lockdowns, through home working, businesses and their ingenuity in terms of kind of coming up with different ways of operating. And so really a lot of the factors that you need to effect real change you really just come to the fore in a matter of weeks in many cases through this crisis. So I think what we've tried to capture and Build Back Responsibly is that this is possible, and there isn't anything stopping us harnessing that goodwill and potential to really now focus squarely on making real progress on the development goals. And for what it's worth, in terms of the good work of Community Planning Aberdeen, the goals are really well encapsulated there. That's what we're trying to solve, is the most pressing issues within the locality. And by us working with and through businesses, we have a responsible business map that says, how effectively can you play your part? And we can help you diagnose how to do that, how to measure it, and whatever. That's really what we're trying to achieve. So it's a long-winded answer that says COVID has shown us that change is possible very, very quickly. I suppose the opportunity is really here within this room today and beyond. We've got the factors and the kind of environmental context we need. I think the leadership that we can demonstrate now that's squarely focused on action is really where we need to get to. So, delighted to be a part of that and to be working for change within the city.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Alan. We have another question here for Councillor Lang, and that is, what is the value of coming through Community Planning Aberdeen as opposed to other existing routes?
Okay, thank you, Laurie, for that, and thank you for the person that's posed that question. I think I mentioned in my opening remarks that we've been prompted to move forward with making greater links with business, because we felt that sometimes they weren't aware of what was available and out there and what was required. Now, sometimes people get a little nervous of that, because I'm aware that businesses have links with different groups that they've managed to set up themselves or through personal contacts that they have. And we certainly don't want to affect that if relationships have been built up. But I think, as both Alan and Michelle have mentioned in their presentations, there has been a considerable amount of work done by community planning to identify the needs of the city. And that's really what's driven forward the outcomes that have come through the local outcome improvement plan. And because we've gathered that information and data, it allows us to identify where there may be gaps, where we require that extra help, particularly from the private sector, and also the opportunities that are available, not just to assist and help the people and communities within Aberdeen, but also areas where business can tap into, which will allow them to reap the benefits in their own organisations as well. So I think that's probably the main reason that I see us working in partnership. We can actually harness that collective resource and actually direct it and channel it into the areas that are most in need in the city, and indeed areas that may not be covered already. So that's why I would be promoting that with both public and private sectors working together. I noticed, Laurie, that we have another question around reflecting on the fact that we've got a lot of empty buildings within the city now, and asking the question about whether we could look at the recycling of those buildings. And I think it's safe to say in Aberdeen, you know, we've mentioned, all speakers I think today have mentioned the COVID-19 situation and the impact that that's had. But I think we all recognise that Aberdeen was also going through a fairly significant downturn and reduction in relation to oil and gas within the city, and so COVID on top of that has been something of a perfect storm. And the fact that more and more businesses have, you know, have their workforce working from home because of the restrictions, and it may be that that when we hopefully get back to a degree of normality, that the same pattern of people working within the city and in large buildings won't be the same. We'll actually be adopting different practices. So I see that this may be an issue that we will be wrestling with moving forward as well. From a council perspective and a community planning perspective, the difficulty that we have is not having those buildings under our direct control. It's something that we've had challenges with for many years in the city, particularly, you know, I look at Union Street, where often people ask us why we don't try to do more to populate Union Street, encourage businesses in there. But when you don't have direct control over those properties, it's very difficult for us to really influence to any great degree. We have tried it, some of the incentives that we bring in, particularly in Union Street, to encourage owners and things to make sure that they're investing in those properties. We have looked at how we can bring more people actually living within the city, and that then helps to you know, make those connections, and businesses will follow that. I realise that it's difficult for particularly smaller businesses who are trying to start up, so that's why we work very closely with Business Gateway, Elevator, and indeed other private sector partners to ensure that we are, where it's within our gift, creating space that allow businesses to come in and utilise those areas. But we certainly would be keen as a community planning partnership to enter discussions with the private sector around how best we could utilise that empty space and vacant properties that we've got currently and may well have in the future as well.
Perfect, thank you, Councillor Lang. Just aware of the time, we thank you very much for sending through your questions and are really keen to hear more from the attendees that we've got on the call. So we will press on and head into our workshop sessions.
Welcome back, everyone. I hope you've been able to come back from the breakout session successfully. The good news is we're sticking bang on time to our programme, so we've got that bit right, but I think you'll all agree that this morning has just flashed by. So the breakout session that I joined, very interesting, but I don't know if we got the kind of chat and the discussion that we're really hoping to be able to create with the business community, just because the time has just flown by. So really what I wanted to say is just to give you assurance that this today is just a can opener for further discussion, further events, and we're very open to feedback from colleagues that attended today to see how we best do that going forward. So what I'm going to do now is we're just going to go into a brief plenary. We've got Laurie and Georgia who supported the breakout session. And I'll just ask you to do feedback on how those went. So Laurie, if I start with yourself.
Yes, of course. So I was in the breakout session 1 about securing our future for our children and young people.
Laurie and
Georgia, who supported the...
Reflecting on what you said there, Michelle, I think we could have had a great deal more time to really get discussion going, but we certainly heard some fantastic context from our speakers, as well as some real examples from Fiona, who was our business speaker in that session. So that was really interesting. I think what came across feedback-wise from our attendees really is that collaboration and partnership is key, and that looking forward, how can we just almost build momentum, and what we've already started in terms of the platform and community planning Aberdeen, and where we can really take it forward in terms of really working together cross sectors, cross businesses, cross different agencies, really aligning all of our efforts to maximise the impact that we make for our most vulnerable. So I think that was the real takeaway so far. But yes, reflecting that it's very much the beginning of a conversation. It's fantastic to see so many people along today, so many interesting businesses. So hopefully that really can just be the starter to start this conversation going. And fingers crossed we can maybe follow up with a more in-person event that allows for that network and opportunities that Councillor Ling spoke about in her introduction. So I've kept it very brief, but happy now to pass across to Georgia, who was facilitating our second workshop.
Yeah, thank you so much, Laurie. So yeah, as Laurie said, I was facilitating the second workshop, which was entitled Nurturing Our Local Communities. So we kicked off with Gillian Evans, who's the Head of Health Intelligence at NHS Grampian, and Anne McKenzie, who's Lead Commissioner on the Aberdeen City Health and Social Care Partnership. They really took us through the sort of challenges and opportunities for Aberdeen and how, you know, they've been magnified due to COVID. Issues such as poverty, mental and physical health, well-being and resilience, inequality, and of course climate and pollution continue to be focus areas. We covered activities such as local food growing, pantries and green space will be an important focus for the future, as well as looking at safe, active travel, digital inclusion and reusable products. We then heard from Derek Thompson, Operations Director from Worley, who came in to support everything that, you know, Gillian and Anne had said, and how important public, third and private sector working together will be for the importance of recovery in Aberdeen, and really demonstrated that Worley has health, safety and well-being at the heart of their business purpose and values, and this really leads through into their work in the communities and the environment. And then the couple of questions that we managed to get from organisations and businesses were just really supporting how important this collaboration is, and really encouraging people to really commit, look at where the opportunities are that they can contribute, and get in touch with Community Planning Aberdeen to take these further. And of course, businesses in the community can be here to support as well.
Fantastic. We'll now move on to some closing remarks from Chief Superintendent George MacDonald from Police Scotland.
Okay, thanks very much, everyone. It's been a really useful and thought-provoking session this morning, and it's really important to participate in today's event. I think it really confirms to us all the importance of responsible business and the shared aspiration across the city to improve the outcomes and for all the people and communities of Aberdeen. So for me, there's undoubtedly an exciting opportunity for the business sector, the public sector and the third sector to come together around these goals and to try and shape what could be something that's transformational for our city. And I think we acknowledge that there's probably further conversations and work to shape how that actually looks like and how we can facilitate that. There's a clear vision for Community Planning Aberdeen. Our vision for 2026 is Aberdeen is a place where we all can prosper, and everyone in the city can prosper. And I think from today we can all agree that every single one of us have a part to play in making that vision become a reality, and ensure that everybody has got access to the opportunities that are available through the city, and regardless of their background or indeed circumstances. There's obviously a real drive throughout the business community, throughout our individual communities, and through a lot of different sectors, and a passion and commitment that our focus is really about helping families, helping each and every community and the businesses flourish and doing well. We're all acutely aware now more than ever that we really need to come together and to take action and to be bold in our leadership. It's often said that difficult situations inspire ingenious solutions, and indeed the challenges that are facing our economy and our communities in the North East are stark. But I think if we look across the country, look across the world, many successful initiatives have actually been created in this moment when we're in a downturn or a recession and there are challenges facing us. So perhaps it's maybe not as counterintuitive as it might sound in terms of the challenging situation that we face and all the pressures that we face. We have got talent throughout every single community in the city. Money can be accessed and borrowing can be competitive at times like this. And indeed, as has been touched on in some of the questions today, premises can be accessible and affordable for the very same reasons. So I think we need to look at these opportunities collectively and build on that. I think it's fair to say there are greater minds than I here today, and as a city we've clearly faced many challenges over quite a few decades. We've had downturns, we've had recessions, we've had a realignment of our economy and our communities, but Aberdeen has always been a very strong city to rise to any challenges it faces and reshape using the skills, the knowledge and the talent that extends right across every community in our city. So I suppose the plea that I have for you today as Deputy Chair of Community Planning Aberdeen is that we join forces, we continue the conversations, and for you to become a partner of Community Planning Aberdeen and support the local outcome improvement plan and how we can achieve the aspirations and the vision for the city. There are lots of ideas out there. None of us individually have got monopoly of those ideas, so some future events and that coming together to kind of share thoughts and aspirations would be very helpful. After today, we're obviously very keen to keep the momentum and to follow up with businesses with the continuing support of indeed business in the community. For me personally, today has hopefully shone a light on the opportunity, on the art of the possible, for the business, public sectors and the third sector and our communities to come together around shared goals that could indeed be transformational for the city. And again, for me, the ask and task is to ensure that we can collectively provide that platform to develop, to grow, and to provide all and every opportunity to support our communities in the city and ultimately to become an exemplar, as has been touched upon by Andreas and others earlier, for corporate social responsibility, and others can look to us as we lead the way. Finally, I would like to finish by thanking the community planning team and business and community for organising today's event. It is challenging trying to pull events like this together, and technology can sometimes be challenging, but we've worked around those challenges today as we can work around the challenges that we face as a city, and I thank you all for your participation today. Thank you.